in this beekeeping congress, and I said to my colleague in office, guys, only me going to Canada because I fall in love with Canada from my childhood. So, and I came here, and I working in. I was editor in Beekeeping Journal. So, and I like to make interview with some famous Canadian beekeeper, and our priest just take care about us. And he said, I have one very good, very big and good beekeeper, and it was Vladimir. He came, and I make interview. I just wrote, and year later I was here. He
You made interview, then you made love.
Yeah, in one day.
In one day.
In one day. So, and year after I was here, and my family and friends was completely disaster. They just think I'm going out of mind. Why I just left Croatia, I get a nice job, a nice apartment, everything. But I said, I know where I'm going. And I had really great life. We had lots of hives, and we travel lots of different hives, and really enjoy. But unfortunately, my husband passed away. He had bone cancer.
How long ago?
10 years ago. And I slowly just going down. And when I was alone, I handled around between 200 and 250 hives. I need this for cranberry pollination. Guys need so many hives. And I do it myself everything.
Wow.
Except only when I must move the hives. My Vladimir's friend coming and move the hives to Grand Prairie or this river area. But I extracting, I do market, I do everything. And they saved me because when my husband passed away, I think I'll go out of mind. But I worked so hard, and it was great therapy. So, and after that, slowly, I just, every year I have less and less hives. And finally, this year, I have only few on my backyard in my village. So this is the short story about me and my. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful story.
so
So did you have a lot of, I have a couple of friends who are beekeepers who used to be beekeepers in Alberta and Saskatchewan.
yes,
And
there are lots of alfalfa and sweet clover and
big,
it's,
big,
really,
big.
and canola. People just move past there to pollinated canola fields and.
But one of the things they tell me is like they have never seen, because I showed them pictures of my hive and how I make a small entrance and stuff like that, right? And they say, why you do that? I said, I don't know. Well, what people say to do, so that's what I did. He says, no, nothing. Our hives are all fully open, as big as possible. But then here's the other thing. They don't know about the weather over here. I've been told that over here, the bees suffer because of moisture a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
yes,
in the interior, in Alberta, Saskatchewan, no issue with such thing.
Cold will never kill the bees.
That's right.
Yeah.
Only water will kill
Yeah.
them. So moisture is a problem. And there is a difference between beekeeping on an open field where there are not a lot of trees for wasp nests or there's enough detractants from rodents, etc. But here you also have that problem because we have a lot of trees, etc. around the hives. You produce the entrance not just because of bees coming and going, but to help them mitigate their risk of attack from other insects. So smaller openings, less to protect.
Yeah.
So there are different reasons, and that's not to say that their way is wrong or your way is wrong. In beekeeping, it's whatever way works for you. That's the right way to beekeep.
Yeah, right.
So, everyone, it's like parenting. Everyone is an expert until they have their own kids. And then,
That's perfect.
Exactly right.
That is
So
a perfect
in
analogy.
Europe, they always say, how many beekeepers, so many opinions. So everybody saying
I've heard.
my way is the best way.
10 beekeepers, 11 opinions, right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
so if reduced entrances work for you for whatever reason, like I know that in my own beekeeping practice, where I leave the bees determines how much space I give them, how healthy or sick they are. Like if let's say I'm trying to rejuvenate a hive, I have a queen, a hive here that was a swarm. It's an actually excellent education. They are requeening themselves because you just never know how old the old queen is. Because when they swarm, they take the old queen. She looks beautiful, but she's just not laying. And in order, before I get involved and kill her and replace her with my own queen, I'm letting them go through their own process of requeening.
Super
So right now they're making their new queen. Their old one looks good. She's staying on site. They're not going to swarm, but fall queens are awesome. So if this is successful, then you sort of let that natural process. Because they're weak, there's just not a lot of bees. I'll reduce entrances. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, plus I'm nursing my few hives along. I'm not a commercial beekeeper that has 500 hives. I have time, like Zdenka, and she mentors many people in our bee club. She always says to me, because it takes me forever in a hive, she's like, oh, when I was a beekeeper, I didn't have time. I couldn't do what you're doing, but you've got nothing else, so you may as well. You know, one of those things, right? You're more likely where they'll write off a hive, you nurse it back to health.
Where are you located?
Well, mine are here.
Oh, okay.
So the two here are mine. I lost also everything there.
Yeah, so nice strong hives
And those things happen, so we just don't even talk about it.
How
so
much-
strong hives, and I'm thinking in the spring from one hive I will make two, split it, but
So will you try to do swarm traps in the spring, or will you literally go out and buy and start again?
I don't typically buy. I have, but I don't typically buy. I would rather take the hive and split and grow what I have. But I'm a hobbyist. I'm not a commercialist.
yeah, I
don't
usually we always we produce some nukes, but almost we went to Armstrong. There was one very good beekeeper. His name was John Gates, and he produced very good beans and nukes. And we always buying lots of new beans. We almost change the queens every year or every second year. So, and this guy produced really great lots of beans. So.
How long does a bee or a queen normally live?
So it depends on who she is, but typically between 3 and 5 years.
5 years.
But you want to make sure she's laying as many eggs as possible when they're young. They come. So the younger they are, the better the production.
For instance, Americans, professional beekeepers who has 12 or between 10 and 12,000 hives, they change queen every year because they produce lots of honey. And young queen in the top of season, she produced every day 2,000 eggs, and because they need always young.
Why the concern with queen cells in your hive then, if they're or naturally producing new queen?
Because you're commercializing beekeeping when you give them for pollination. The hive looks different than your standard stack here. So then you would set up a pollination hive, which Zdenka can sort of share with you what that looks like. So they look different. So you don't want them swarming because the queen takes half the hive with her, and then you start starting over. So if you're splitting, that's good. But if you want to use pollination or you need them to go out and collect nectar, you don't want them swarming. So you really want to just you're trying to control their natural cycle.
And you can tell a swarm queen cell from a supersedure cell based on where it is.
Or the time of year, you look at the hive and you're like, they're making queens. Okay, what's going on? That's where you read your hive, right? So somebody who has experience will look at that and say, oh, they're requeening. Look, the queen isn't laying well. It's the time of year. There's not a lot of bees. That's what's going to make sense. So they're requeening. Versus in the springtime when you're looking, you're like, what? 7 queen cells? These guys are ready to. They want to find a new place. So, and you take out those queen cells and you put them in new boxes, but then you don't get enough honey. Bees that are able to go and collect nectar. So if you want high bee production, you need a ton of bees in a hive that's not going to swarm. So that they just collect nectar and collect nectar. That's the efficiency. So it depends what it is you want to do. Like with bees, you have so many things that are open. So we're going to have this winter probably in February a gentleman who all he does business-wise, he sells honey because honey is a great sticky byproduct of beekeeping. His primary business or one of his businesses is nukes, so that's what he'll do. He limits how many nukes he makes a year, and he'll just sell them. So that's where sort of his cost. But then he doesn't have tons of really big hives to hold collection because they're thin. The more nukes you make, the thinner your hive. So beekeepers control by monitoring. Does that make sense? You had a couple of questions.
Well, before I was just gonna say that my situation is I've started growing melons this year, and I need bees just for pollination. I tried to rent some bees, and so I decided to get a new duty truck. And
Golden Meadows Honey Farm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christian and Libby.
so I put another box on it. But my situation is there's 12 months of the year in the area. All I want the bees for really is to pollinate, for them to be there when I need them.
So here's we had a speaker about this 2 months ago. So we had somebody speak on mason bee farm. So they have mason bees, and then you time. And I mean, the video, is it available on our website?
Should be.
Yeah. So you should go back and look at one of our old videos because he talked about needing bees only for pollination. So he was a beekeeper, but then went into mason beekeeping just for pollinating his farm because that was his priority. Sounds similar
Right.
to what you're talking about.
I understood that that mason bees, they're the season they can pollinate is very limited.
So there's one way around that where, because you control when their eggs are hatched. You can put them out every week on an off cycle. So every week put out a new set of eggs to hatch so that your beekeeping or your pollination season is a little bit longer. So you kind of control because you store the eggs in the freezer or fridge. Fridge. So you can time it and it makes it a bit longer, but by June their window of pollination is sort of done. So I don't know when melons.
I need to be pollinating to the end of June at least, maybe a little bit in July.
So then this is where you would then find a beekeeper who's willing to give you just a pollination box. So a box only for pollinating. Instead of having to keep bees. Did you want to become a beekeeper?
Well, I was hoping I could find somebody that wanted to look after them on my property and grow the hives. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Hasn't happened.
Were you at the bottom of 224th?
Yeah.
Were you the fellow that, okay. All right. Yeah, I got your email and we did put it out there on the website, but nobody volunteered.
Can you keep the bees safe from the bear?
So far, but I don't know. I'm going to build a fence, an actual fence around the hives because I'm not going to be here all the time.
An electrified fence.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be wood posts with metal mesh all around it and electric fence on the inside.
Yeah. That should work.
I think the only reason she got broken into is because of the tree, right?
Well, there were a few reasons how the bear got in and attacked the bear. There are different reasons. Some bears are just so hungry they'll be hold them.
Depends on the time of year.
Hey,
everyone.
How are you?
Here is hot water for tea. Here is coffee. Okay, please.
Thank
It's
you.
really that depends, but if you are protecting your bees, there are many ways. Your electric fence will be fine for years and years and years, and you'll never get broken into.
I doubt that because it's battery operated and the process of keeping that battery
Do
alive.
you use a voting battery? Because I don't know. I mean, you sound very educated, but a lot of good people have a battery. They take old car battery or just recharge it.
To the extent of battery.
Yeah,
I've
very
got
quickly that.
two of them and I recycle them. And it seems like they draw down. It may be the machine neighbor gave it to me, it's 40 years old. It produces a good zap, but possible.
A way to attract the bear to the fence, to sort of teach it a lesson, would be to either spread peanut butter on it or to tie bacon to it, so that they actually are attracted to it, get their mouth and snout on there, and then they
And the
never come
battery's
back
fully
again.
charged.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are, that's not cruel. We've
Yeah.
had conservation come in and speak to our bee club, and that's definitely something that they recommend to do, to teach
Yeah.
the wildlife to stay away, by making it uncomfortable for them, and then the choice is theirs, more or less, so being respectful.